Newburyport Planning Board, order. Newbury?
Newbury.
Oh, am I in Newbury?
Yes. It's okay.
That's all right, you know, it's.
If you want to bring them into it, I guess you
Yeah,
can.
I will, not really. In any case, so Wednesday, December 19th, 2018, it appears that we do not have minutes, so the first appearance would be Mr. Jesperson. If you're ready to go, bring a chair up.
Come on.
Nobody's here for the Upper Green meeting, are they?
Anybody for Upper Green?
We're all historical
Seeing
commission.
none?
Did they say Newburyport?
You did.
You can rewind, please.
It's okay. It's okay.
I know, it happens, I
And I'm going to bring Dawn up.
guess. Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Hello,
My dog.
folks.
Please grab a chair.
Okay. So, you had some questions last time which I was unable to answer. And please have a seat. And having to do with the fact that we had to go to the Secretary of the Interior's publication on the barn and its preservation or restoration, whatever it was. So I did, in fact, go back and do that, all 240 or so on pages.
Yes, I understand.
And it's okay. Most of it had nothing to do with what we're doing. So we were able to go in pretty quickly. And the question you asked of me is this going to comply? And we have some questions about that. But I had prepared something. The restoration is, as they define it, is the act or process of accurately depicting the form, features, and character of a property as it appeared in a particular time period by means of removal of features from other periods in its history and reconstruction of the missing features or restoration period. The limited and sensitive upgrading of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, we don't have any of those. Or other code-sense required work to make the properties functional is appropriate within a restoration project. We're not going to do any of that. Restoration standards allow for the depiction of a building at a particular time in its history by preserving materials, features, finishes, and spaces from its period of significance and removing those from other periods. Okay. It goes on to say that many historical buildings can be adapted for new or updated use. We're not doing that. Okay. And we're trying to keep the historical character and integrity of the barn. Regardless of the treatment, the regulatory requirements must be addressed. We'll do that as far as the building permits are concerned, and I think that takes care of the regulation. And they say sensitive design is what's appropriate, and we'll talk to that with Don. So the standards for preservation, and I think we're talking about preservation, restoration, sort of mixed.
Yeah, kind of back and forth, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, so far with your
Okay.
reading of it.
The property will be used as it was historically. It was a hay barn when it was first there. It's not going to be given any new uses at this time. We're not going to change that structure. In fact, we're going to return it to what it was.
Okay.
The historic character of the property will be retained and preserved, and that's essentially what we're doing. We're going to put some drainage in. We will be doing some restoration of the foundation so it holds the building up a little better. That's not going to alter the character that anyone would see, but it will have some improvements in the foundation and in the ground. Each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time and place. The work needed to stabilize, consolidate, and conserve existing historic materials and features will be physically and visually compatible and identifiable upon close inspection and properly documented for future research. In other words, we're keeping as much of the barn original timbers, and we can, Don can go into that. some of the stuff that was sawn and with a, basically an up and down saw or straight saw rather than a circular saw. Changes in the property that have acquired historical significance in their own right will be retained and preserved. We're actually going back in time with this barn. We're going to keep the same materials except for, and this is one that is a question, and that is roofing.
Yes.
We intend to put a steel roof on the barn because it's one of the treatments that in fact could have been period, but we don't have any original information of the period. It could have been wood shingle, probably was, could be steel, and I did some research and found out that it had asphalt, has asphalt shingle on it. And asphalt roofing actually came into common use in the early 20th century when the U.S. National Board of Fire Underwriters had a campaign to replace wooden shingles with asphalt shingles as a way of upgrading barns. So that's where the asphalt came from. Doors and windows, we have, what we will be doing for both ends of the barn is actually going back to the original door size. The ones that are on there now are smaller. The doors have been boxed in. We're going to open those up. There'll be a split door with a transom light, and that fits in with the treatment of doors and windows on page 179 of the Secretary's report. Our information based on examination of the structure of the existing barn is that the windows were added at the time after the barn was built. Not including them in the restored barn is consistent with the guidelines of the Secretary's report. There will be lights over the windows of the doors at each end. Doors, right now, there's a single door that's sliding to one side. We're going to do split doors, slide to each side in the middle. It's consistent with what the larger doors were.
Are they security type lights?
Transom lights. Transom lights. Transom, it's just a, when I say lights, it's a window.
It's a window, okay.
Excuse me, I'm hard of hearing. I need you to repeat that question.
Well, the question was it a security light that was mixed up with lights versus windows?
Okay. In the structural items, the historical structure of the barn is being preserved or restored as detailed and illustrated in the document that you referred to on page 56 and 121. The interiors, the recommended treatment as necessary when restoration is not feasible or possible. We are doing restoration, but it's a barn, so it's going to be open beam kind of thing. And replacing in kind is what we're doing. Some of the material will come from the L that we're taking down. If we can reuse it, we'll do that. Others, Don has been in the restoration business of barns, so I can let him talk to that and talk to any questions you have. The building site is going to be largely maintained. We're going to improve drainage on it so that we don't have, I want to lower the possibility of rot, but I don't think it's going to materially change how it looks. So that's the work that I've done.
Oh, good, that's,
One question, what about the cupolas? You've got
They
two
stay
there.
on.
They're staying
Yeah.
on,
Yep.
so they're in good enough shape to actually be reused as
They
they
may
are.
be redone. I think they're pretty rough, but you know what? To really examine them, you have to get up pretty high. So when we take things down, we'll take an examination. When they go back up, they will be there. So that part will be preserved.
And they'll look the way they look.
They will look the way they look. They'll have the same windows, call them lights, and the same size. The cap on them will be metal rather than asphalt. That's our plan.
So do you think the cupolas were original?
Cupolas were
You don't know. Hard to tell until you get at it.
It's really difficult to tell.
We will not know that until the cupola come down.
Okay.
I would determine that by looking at the type of nails they will use for the square A or square B cut nail versus the wire nail, and if they were modern full dimension timbers or so on. And then that applies to the same with the doors. The door could have been on Hingerton Pinto, but we won't know that until we take the siding off. So the sliding doors became popular in the 1850s, so the cupola, the silo, and the transom window. But it was the sliding door with the biggest improvement in the barn back in the 1850s. So,
And if my memory serves, that's the period you're looking at.
what's that?
That's the period that you're intending
I
to.
believe this barn, if I'm right, probably gonna be, I'm gonna say around 1870 to 1890, because they didn't use the very large timbers, they were sawn, and the layout method was not either a square rule or stride rule. It was a full dimension timber, so they just cut the joint without making any housing, anything like that. So I'm gonna say 1870 to 1890. Yeah. I brought my set of frame drawings, so I figured I'd get that and bring that out to you, so I can point out to you
Sure.
what my intentions are.
Do you have any intended use other than restoring the building?
Yes, long-term. What we are doing with this is preserving the building. Eventually, what we have looked at as a family is saying, you know, this might be a compatible use to bring a sculpture and an art park basically into the conservation land. I've talked to planning, and it would be an allowed use. We would put roads or trails in. We would have guest sculptures and put outdoor sculptures in, much like some of the other sculpture parks that exist. And we think it would be a really neat use of this preserved property. At that point, if and when it's no longer a horse barn, we can have art classes, sculpture building, that sort of thing. And this barn could be wonderful display space for that kind of thing. So that's what we contemplate right now.
Right.
But, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the future. Right now, we're about preserving it and making it a really nice piece. It's fallen into being a good, more than disreputable sign.
Is there water on Marsh Meadow Road?
There is.
There is. Okay, so you have fire safety covered then?
We do.
Good.
There is a hydrant right at the beginning. It's within 200 feet of there, and then there's one down at the other barn as well, and then one down at the circle.
Excellent.
Yes, you brought water all the way down.
Yes, we did.
To the benefit of the town.
Well, for the benefit of the town, and it was, I mean, we split the cost with the Byfield Water District, and I think it was a win for all of us, up and down the road. So.
That's when I got rid of my fire truck.
I see, okay.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Pulaski, would you like to show us what the...
Well, what Marshall has here is what I call a 7-bank, 6-bay, center aisle, gable entrance bank barn. It's a very traditional barn that only found in New England. Although I have seen one of them has been built out in Ohio back in like 1890 or so. And the folks out in Ohio thought that was pretty unusual, but it's obvious that a timber right or bond right, whatever you like to call them, had migrated from New England up to Ohio and built one of these bonds, but these are found throughout New England only. This wall here is the B and C aisle right here. And when you walk into the barn today, every one of the connecting members,
Some other people want to come up and look.
I just want to peek over.
when you walk in the center aisle of the barn, you look on both on the left and right-hand side, every one of the connecting members in between the clean posts have been taken out. And the reason for that, they built a they built hot stall in these areas, which is ideal for hot stall. This barn was never built as a hot stall. And the reason why they took this out, because it's only like 7 feet 4 inches off the floor, which is too low for the orchard. So they cut them all out. My intention is, if I can find any extra timbers from the basement of this barn, I'm gonna recut the joint and put it back in where they belong. So not only we have 12 members are missing, we are also missing 6 members from the second floor in the interior post, in the interior bed. They cut these members out here. This is still there, but this not. And the reason why they cut everyone out is so they can make room for the hay trolley, for the hay bales and so on. So again, my intention is to try to find any extra timbers from the basement and put it back in its place. I'm gonna cut this joint and to put it back right where it goes.
How's it even standing without racking, without those members?
Well, you got these braces into here, and these braces that keep the structure from racking. So you got braces, it's pretty unusual, I don't see any braces on the first floor. It's a newer barn, so as time went along, I seen it from day one. People cut corners and try to do things quicker. And so with this barn being a fairly new barn, there's very limited amount of braces. There is braces on the eave wall up on the second floor, but there is on the gableall, and, I'm sorry, this is the interior bed, this is the gable wall. The gable wall got wall studs. On the eave wall, they get horizontal members. So when the siding go back on, it will be on vertically. But when the siding go back on here, it's gonna have to go on horizontally. But then when you put the wooden shingles on, they'll cover the siding from the outside. Marshall wants to use the wooden shingles. I'm all for it because it's lighter in material. It doesn't put any stretch on the frame. And the same thing with the metal roof. I am not a big fan of asphalt shingles. You see asphalt shingles on old houses and old barns. Originally, when they were built, they had wooden shingles and pine sheeting board, which is very light. It drives me nuts when I see somebody replacing all these wooden shingles, and they put a layer of plywood, and then they put a layer of asphalt shingle. That's too much weight for the old rafters. These rafters was only big enough to handle the weight of the wooden shingles and sheathe them. So anyway, so Marshall wanted to have shingles. And I said, well, these staples are not long and not short enough, and they can protrude from the inside. And my idea was to add a layer of plywood to the outside. Well, I don't like adding plywood because that's not done traditionally. And I thought, oh, there's a better way of doing it. And it's even better than the first idea. Instead of using 1 inch thick sheeting board, we're going to order 1 1/4 inch thick. And I've seen that on a lot of the older barns. They're actually called 5/4 thick, which will make the barn last much longer. And then we can go ahead and put these staples through the wood shingle, and they won't come through the inside. So when it's all done, it's going to look like what it should be, and it's going to look like the same on the inside. The only thing that's going to be different is the metal roof. I'm for the metal roof, and they did come out around the 1890s and 1900, 1910. And
Actually,
they actually were galvanized.
They were galvanized.
Yes, and,
It looked at, I was surprised at when metal roofs were first came into being. They were BC. Metal roofs had been around for a long, long time. Both metal and wood. And in my research, I saw a building that was built in Europe in 1280. Still had the original metal roof on it until it was destroyed in the bombing in World War II. Just about 700 years. Pretty long lasting.
And if you would have to see the shingle on the roof, it does pose a threat to fire hazard because if anything gets on it, it could catch fire. And plus, when the snow tends to stick on the shingle. With a metal roof, it tends to slide off. I'd like to get the weight off the roof of the barns, you know. We don't need to have any more stress on the frame itself. Unfortunately, the frame in the basement has been redone over and over. There's only one small part of the basement that still shows the original steel beam and a floor joint. But somebody has fixed all these joints, and I call them Band-Aid. You only could do so much Band-Aid work, and it got to stop. It needs to be taken down, and the plan is to build a new timber frame in the basement. New posts, new floor joists, new carrying beam, new steel beam, and all the joints going to be done, cut traditionally with mortise to tenon joint. I am going to make improvement on the floor joint, because the floor joints in the existing barn, they did not bevel the 45 on the end of the floor joist, which create more of an opportunity for the floor joint split at the drop nut joint. So when we make the new floor joint, there will be full dimension 8x8 like they are in the barn now. We are going to bevel a 45 cut, so it will prevent that splitting. Other than that, the floor joints are pretty much going to go in the same area, the same direction. Right now in the barn, all the floor joints run in this direction. Except for this aisle, the floor joints run this way. I'm going to make the floor joints go all the same direction because when you lay down the new flooring, you have to run the flooring from here to there. Then you have to turn the flooring and go in this way. Structurally, it would be a lot stronger if you have the flooring going from here to there and they stagger them to make the barn flooring much better than it originally was. As far as the doors, the windows, I'm leaving that up to Marshall. Originally, there were doors on the end. The windows on the side, I believe, was added around 1920 to 1930. And so was the whitewash. This was where they had the cows. Whitewash was required by law in both U.S. and Canada in the 1930s and 40s. That is not original, and they did that for sanitary purpose. So when the frame comes down, it gets sent to our shop. I am going to beam clean the whitewash and get it off because it's not original. And then when the frame, you might see some faded white spots on the beam in this aisle here. Other than that, the flooring, I'm going to make the flooring probably a good 2-inch thick. I'm probably going to make it either probably tongue groove. So when you have any dust on the floor, and when it won't fall through into the basement. It'll be just like the old houses that you see. You get the flooring and you get the dustboard that falls in between the floor joists, so no dust can't fall through the basement. So here I'm going to use tongue groove. It's just going to keep it as the original was. As far as the cupola, we'll find out about that when it comes out, if they were original or not. The cupola came out in 1850, but this barn was built way after 1850. It's not that complicated, not that hard, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed with all the people here. It's like, really? It's like, my God, it's like...
I know, there was the one little paragraph in this.
Well, Newbury takes its history very seriously.
Right, right.
They've been around a long time, so.
Now, somebody had sent a piece of paper that supposed to have this description of this, what is this, standard,
Oh, the secretary's standards, and that's what we were talking, that's what I was talking about. I had gone through the standards, I actually sent a PDF, which is what I got, to Martha.
Right, which
yeah,
is,
and what kind of confuses me in this here is, all this, well, it was on a different piece of paper, but it said, something, repair work and something. I don't do repair work. Repair work is when you use metal fastening, pressure treated lumber, modern material like LVL, power beam. I don't do that. I use traditional timbers. My first option is to try to reclaim all the timbers from the basement and put it from the first floor and up. If I do know that some of the principal rafters on the roof towards the far end of the barn, some of these principal rafters I may not be able to restore. There is a barn that I'm hoping I can take down in Loudon, New Hampshire. The same size timbers, the same layout. It's not only it's 38 by 72, but it's a 40 by 100. There's a lady that wants to replace her existing barn in Stoughton, Mass. And that her barn is 40 by 62. My intention with the rest of the material from the Loudon barn in New Hampshire is to stage the existing principal rafter and put it in its place. I'd rather use old principal rafter than new lumber. So I will find out more about that later as time comes. If I have to, the last option I will is to order new sawn timbers at the same size and make the same rafters with the same joint. That's about it. Yeah, it's just that some of the rafters and the connecting members and the upper tie beam will have to be replaced. I'm hoping with with old sawn timbers. If not, I'll get new sawn timbers, and if you want me to make the patina look the same, we'll just do a little trick by burning it with a little blow torch, and just kind of make it older looking. That's about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I should add one other thing, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The stone foundation. The stone foundation, on this side of the barn, it's all open from here to here. And it is open from I think from here to here. No, I'm sorry, they enclosed it in, right? Yeah. I want to remove these stones because originally there was an opening here and there was an opening here. So we'll just drive through in the basement, just like you have on the first floor to the center aisle. Yes, right over here, if you go in the basement, there's an indication they fill this wall in. I want to remove that wall and I want to make it to the ramp, and Marshall agreed. That's the way it originally was built. I'm not sure if we're going to close this in, but I definitely want to keep this open. Just want to bring it back to the way it was.
So are you using field stone for the foundation, is that?
Yeah. There is some stone left from the L, and that would be the ideal material to use and put over here. In fact, I think they took the stone from here and they put it over the L, so I don't know.
Bring it home.
Thank you, that's helpful. Is,
How long would you expect the project to take?
Longer than I thought now.
Well, assuming you were starting tomorrow.
If we were to start tomorrow, I would like to get the bond down hopefully in 2.5, 3 weeks. I'm not gonna rush into it because safety is the number one concern, especially when you're dealing with a structure that has no failure. When they get to my shop, I'm gonna say the restoration will probably gonna take 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And you guys are welcome to come to our operation up in Orford, New Hampshire, so you can see how we preserve, restore the rotted beam or the failed joinery. And when that's done, we're gonna have to build a new timber frame structure for the basement. That will probably take me, I don't know, a couple weeks. And then we'll bring all the material down here after the stone is being repaired, restored. Will probably take about 3 days to get the deck down. I expect the frame to be up in a day or 2. And then, when you bring an idea with the shingles, it's gonna take a long time to put the shingles around here. But I'm all for it because that's traditional. So the shingling could take about a week and a half or 2. There's a lot of square footage shingling down there. The metal roof should go down in about a couple of days. So it's a long process. But I want it done right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Yeah.
And somebody has started something on my website, and Martha, who is Martha?
That's me,
Martha,
yes.
okay, Martha. I know it looks like I sell bond. I am not a salesperson. I like to consider myself a bond writer. Some 20-some years ago, I was doing a lot of restoration work after I learned how to do new timber frame. And then one day, somebody called me up and said, can I move a bond from one location and put it on this property? I said, sure, I can do that. So I did that. And then I realized at the time that all of our old bonds are disappearing from our landscape because they are no longer being used because they're not suitable for modern day farming. So the next best option is to do with our old bond is to give it a second chance of life, whether they become a home, a restaurant, a wedding hall. Once in a great while, I get the great thing, somebody like Martha who wants to restore the bond and put it back up. He doesn't have to fix the bond, and there's nothing you can do about it. He can just let it go like all the other bonds. They're just being let go because the insurance, the taxes, the maintenance costs, and everything. So, I don't want you to think I'm like a salesperson. And I'm proud to say that I have restored bond from all across the country and Canada. A monitor bond from Canada, Ontario, and that was relocated to Cape Cod. Although I took down an old 1699 bond in Middleborough, Mass, and unfortunately the owner didn't want to save it, and I did find a home for it, but it went out of state to Connecticut. The whole idea is to save these structures. But very seldom we get somebody like Marshall who wants to keep it as a bond because it's just not functional for today's purpose, you know. And I save a 2-round bond from Indiana. I save a double prone plate bond, other people call a double canter queen post bond, New World dust bond from upstate New York. So I'm not a salesman. And to give the bond a second chance of life, I have to sell these bonds because I learned from the beginning that someone wanted to sell their bond. It's okay, I'll find a buyer for it. And I found a buyer for it, and they got together and they tried to make an agreement. Well, next thing I knew, when I'm doing the project, I got stuck in the middle because both of them did discover that there was some disagreement along the way. So I said, no more, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna buy the bond, I'll find a home for it, and I'll sell it to the person. You hire me to put it back up. But I don't take down the bond until I find a home for it. Because 9 times out of 10, people like to see what they're getting. So it's nice when the bond is still standing. They can walk in there and they can see what they're coming into. So that's why I put the word I sell. That's why you think I'm selling bond. So I hope this covered all the bases here for you, Mark. I can't do any better than that. Good Lord.
Well, I hope so as well.
Yeah. Do you folks have any comments, questions?
I'll leave that to the more expert than I am.
Shannon Howard, Chair of the Historical Commission. So I'm glad to hear the cupolas are going to be reproduced or saved as they are now.
But if they're not original, do we need to save them?
Well, I think they look good on the top of the barn.
Oh, I agree, but there was a written article back in 17 something where they try to convince all the farmers, barn is not intended to have a architectural feature. They meant to be built and left plain. I don't remember the article, but I do remember that something was written that you don't want to have all this fancy stuff to it. Now, the cupola, what was the purpose of the cupola?
Ventilation.
Ventilation?
Vertical ventilation.
Other people say to put in more sunlight. So, which is where it's at. But the cupola did come around in 1850. But the barn was built in 1880, 1890, so maybe they did build the cupola.
But the cupola would be at least period, correct, though, if not original to the barns, is that?
It could have been. I won't know that until we get the cupola down, and I can see that the material was from that period.
No, I don't think you understood my
Okay.
comment.
No.
I was saying, even if it was not original,
Mhm.
it would still be period, correct, though, to have a cupola on it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question becomes whether you're trying to stick to a period of what, as best as you can determine, was the original barn, and not have any added decoration if it was not, I mean, if it was original to the barn. I guess that's what we need to decide.
Well-
What is it we're trying to restore here?
Does not, just the restriction on the barn say it shall be maintained as is, so,
It also says that it will comply with the Secretary's standards, which would make one, a restoration want to choose a period or a time
Well,
frame.
I think we could choose period, we could say,
That's, well,
we
we
know,
can choose.
we know that the windows were added
Right,
20th century,
yeah.
okay? We can leave the, we can.
I'm
we can
not arguing
determine-
for one thing or another. I'm just saying we need to decide what it is we're restoring to.
Yeah.
And determine whether that, which I think pretty much given, you can, Martha, I want to check in with you obviously, but it seems like the restoration requirements are flexible. I mean, they would like you to choose a period and try to stick to it if you can. They're not saying don't do it if you can't, you know.
Yeah.
So,
And I think we're reasonably in compliance with the dictates of that chapter. I don't know about the cupola. If there's a question, I'd be happy to leave it on there because it does look pretty good. I agree with you. And so, if that's okay, we can take a look at that. If you want to revisit it before it goes back up, that's easy enough to do.
right. Well, where it is like also, maybe it would just make sense that once you get it apart, if maybe one of the requirements would just be if you would document what you found, you know,
Yeah,
and,
sure.
you know, just provide a report just to document what it is you found, what it is you did, what you thought was appropriate to do, if that works for, you know,
Yeah, I'm still saying we would like to see them.
see the cupolas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As far as the roofing materials, Mass Historical does acknowledge the fact that cedar shingles are no longer practical, and they do not expect you to put cedar shingles on there. Their answer to the cedar shingles is 3-tab asphalt, non-architectural shingles. But if I am flexible, my barn has a metal roof on it, so I'm flexible on whether we go with a metal roof or not. If he wants to go with a metal roof,
It sounds like for the strength factor, a metal roof's the way to go.
yeah.
So that's, if you accept that, I think that
It's
it's very
much
good.
lighter, it's much easier than the rafters themselves.
So it's your board first, you're asking our board for advice as far as the procedure here goes. So I haven't met with my board in reference to the metal roof, but I was just clarifying that there is an acceptable, what Mass Historical now says, is 3-tab asphalt's okay as an alternative. But as far as metal goes, personally, I don't have a problem with it. If it's given to my board for an opinion, I can't tell you what the answer would be. You see, your siding, roof sheeting and wall siding's all gonna be 1 by and 5/4, right? No sheet stock at all, correct?
The sheeting board,
Yes.
yeah, they're gonna be 5/4 thick, and I requested that they're gonna be 8 and 10-inch, maybe 12-inch wide.
Okay.
I don't wanna deal with 4 or 6-inch. Traditionally, they were wide.
Roof sheeting will be 1 by 12 rough?
I'm not sure if we can get away with using the metal roof, we only need to put like 1 by 6 and leave a nice space in between it. Again, the whole idea of keeping the roof light, but you do need to have some kind of sheeting up there so you can fasten the metal roof to.
My experience is metal roof sweats.
Mhm.
You're gonna want 1 by 12 with tar paper under your metal roof,
Okay,
would be my advice, because I've done numerous ones.
okay.
You don't want condensation dropping on whatever's inside the building.
Okay,
That's my 2 cents on that. Fabrel Roofing is the one I've dealt with before out of Pennsylvania. As far as your side shingles, your wall shingles, what type of,
Western red cedar shingle.
okay,
They're gonna be grade A, and they're gonna have very minimum knot. I might make the 5.5 inch course.
would grade B be more appropriate instead of squared and rebutted?
Grade B, it's a cheaper version, it's not gonna last as long because you're gonna have some knot, and you're gonna allow some rainwater to get in some of around the knot into the building. That's why I suggest going grade A, should to have a nice coverage onto the bond.
Okay. All the exterior trim pine will be,
They're gonna be sun-dried 1 by 8 pine sheeting board, rough, not
Okay.
plain, no, it's gonna be just like the way the barn was built back then, on the corner. And so the rake board and that kind of thing.
the barn doors will be reproductions of the existing doors?
I won't know exactly until we take the sheeting off from the outside of the wall, if they show any evidence of pintle, the hole for the pintle.
Okay.
If they were, then we should have double doors on the pintle. If not, they'll be on the track, sliding
Okay.
track door, which was the biggest improvement on old barn back in the days. because-
And the cast iron sliders now, they're reproducing those.
Yeah, stainless steel and cast iron and so on. I might even make a little roof on top of the track,
Yep.
just to give them more life.
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
And, yeah,
So there'll be no painted surfaces on the outside of the building at all?
no,
Okay.
unless he decides to later, I'm not. You don't paint bonds here, you should leave an asphalt.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless you want to paint bonds red with iron oxide, slaughter a few pigs to get the blood for the color.
I'm going to pass on that for a
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Those are my questions
Okay, thank you.
from an advisory position from the Historical Commission.
Thanks. All right, where are we at, gang? I mean, you know, it seems to me that this is obviously a good thing, you know, a major restoration of this barn. And doing it from the ground up and ensuring that it's put back the way it was originally built to the best of your ability. I would suggest that we recommend that the Board of Selectmen approve this project. I would like to just make one condition that you do just give us a report of what you found, you know,
Mhm.
how you were able to replace, restore, whatever you did.
Sure.
And just how you made the decisions you made, you know, up until including the siding, the roof, and the metal roof, I think makes sense. Then, you know, you're gonna put this building back up, you don't wanna stress it with something that's gonna weaken it right away, so.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any
That's
thoughts on
just to
that?
document it for the future.
Yes, absolutely, and to provide it to the historical.
At what point, you mean, when they have the barn dismantled, or at that point, or once the restoration is completed?
No, I think when it's completed, I think just to document it as they go along through the process so that we have a real, you know, picture of what you found. And, you know, your opinion, you've seen all these barns, you know what you're looking at. We don't. So,
I guess one question would be, if they find something which is very different from what they're anticipating,
right.
would you want them to come back before this board of selectmen to?
I'll tell you what, you don't have to decide that now. If we find something that's very different from what we expect to find, we'll let you know. And we can take photos as we go along.
Right. Yeah.
And taking it apart and putting it back together and put together a document for you to share with the Historical Commission.
That sounds reasonable. You all right with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think it would be helpful. We've done a lot of talking tonight. I think it would be helpful, and you've described very well what you intend to do, but I think it would be helpful to get it in writing for the record. And then that can be presented to the selectmen when you
You
go.
want our writing for your record, is that correct?
Yeah, just a a description of what you've described tonight verbally, and just get that in writing.
Okay.
Yeah, just a narrative, like basically what you
Yeah.
said you're gonna do.
Okay.
And kind of get going and beat the weather before it comes in.
Well, the process.
Mother Nature could be pretty
Yeah, I
brutal
know,
sometimes.
I know. You're-
And if it gets really bad, I'm gonna look for you and I'm gonna drag you out on the job site and give it my hand to finish it.
Well, the issue is that it's the selectmen who actually hold the building restriction. Their next meeting is on January 8th, so if the board, votes tonight to make a recommendation, that could get on the selectmen's agenda for the 8th, and hopefully all is good, but they're the ones who really hold it.
So you still have the Christmas holiday to relax. One way to look at it.
So,
Narrative?
a narrative from us. Just got the- right. Just, we'll get ready.
My record.
So the recommendation from this board needs to state that, in our opinion, this paragraph in the restriction is relative to the standards, their plan meets this paragraph in the restriction
We think so.
to the best of our understanding.
Right, and to the, I think, within reasonable, especially with regard to the roof, I think it seems like that is
Mhm.
a reasonable.
Yeah.
All right, so we would have a motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen, approve this to the Board of Selectmen, and you will just provide a narrative of, to the best that you can say right now, what you intend to do, and that you will also provide, as you go along, you will just document your findings and decisions that you make, and if you do, and in fact, as we just discussed, come upon something totally unexpected, that you will come back to us and say, surprise. So,
That's a planning technical term.
yes, absolutely.
We understand.
Probably should
You
explain
know, I
that.
understand that term only too well.
Oh, we all know what it means.
So could I have a motion to
Yes.
that effect?
I would move that we support this proposal to the Board of Selectmen, with the endorsement from the planning board as so described.
Second.
Discussion?
Any further discussion?
Well, I would
You
just.
want to reference the secretary's standards? Okay.
And I just would note that the restriction is held by Elena Jesperson, trustee of the trust. So in terms of your narrative, that would be appropriate to be written by the owner.
We need to amend your
first.
motion.
Would you like to have the motion? Would you like to have the motion?
Sure, if you want to.
Okay. As was just described. I'm in full favor of that amendment.
I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So what I'll do is I'll just write something to the Board of Selectmen, and if you can talk to Ellen about getting on their agenda for January 8th.
I will do that.
Just
Tomorrow.
double check, but I think that's their first meeting in January.
It is. This is the assistant town clerk.
You should know.
Thank you very much.
I know only because that's when the business licenses are coming up for signature.
Otherwise, it would
that's
have
a-
been Christmas Day, but they canceled that one.
They did.
Yeah, fancy that, so.
All right, we thank you, Mr. Pulaski, for coming in and explaining all this to us.
You're welcome. I'd like to know if I could add a minute of your time. While I travel all across the country, I try to think of ways how we can preserve our bond. And the bigger thing that we need to raise money to restore the bond. Not too often we get somebody like Marshall, he's funding quite a bit of money to restore this bond, but not everybody can do that. What can we do to save our bond? In a town like Newbury, where it's considered well-due, my idea is raise the taxes for the next 20 years. Just to raise enough taxes so you can get $40,000 in the fund. And it allow the town folk to apply for the fund and match their fund to restore the bond. And when you do that, try to save at least one bond for the next 20 years. When you save those 20 bonds are still here for the next 100 and 200 years, meaning that you now continue collecting taxes on the bond. So, and you could put it in writing where, when the bond is restored, it could never be sold or relocated out of town. It could be moved in town, but they have to have insurance on it and they have to maintain the bond. If you do that for the next 20 years and then reduce the taxes, now you've got at least 20 plus bonds you save and you could collect tax money. Continue taking the tax money from the bond and keep putting into the historical building. And that only will work in towns like Newbury. Give it some thought, because there's not too many bonds left, and they are fast disappearing from our landscape. So that would be a much more helpful way of saving a bond. I know the Historical Society is always about keeping record of the name, the date. I don't want that. I want to see that the structure to remain behind. So it's just a thought, and it would be a good thing if it could be done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get that.
Thank you. It's, like any building project, we need.
I was being
Yep.
impressed.
Merry Christmas to all of you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I can't wait to see it.
That's two of us. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be,
And the alley's already gone through. We were the only culvert, so we had no problem with that. They changed the zoning, which was taking me a while.
stuff.
If you've got something you can put in writing, that would be great. I will add to it and I'll get it to them. What are you looking for?
I guess the
We're
next
looking
item,
for just what we
another
do
little
to
group.
keep the barn down,
Okay.
restore those pieces that we have to do.
Okay, I can do that.
And I went in and checked and it was.
Okay.
Already agreed that the L was okay,
Yep,
to put it
yeah.
down from the
Okay.
other.
You send that off to
So
Alexa,
that's
she'll
gone,
get it to you.
that's ready to go, so.
Would be
Is
updating
it,
the zoning amendment.
if I have till Friday,
time
that
for the,
enough?
meeting.
These people are not going to move.
So,
And the recommendations.
Seriously? Yeah.
So this is.
I'm having a gingerbread house party on my children on Friday, so just go back and Central.
We've got some other
Yeah,
business.
we're getting chatty thing out of there.
So,
Are there extras? That would be great.
Yeah, I just heard more than
Heard
ones
enjoy
I
it.
took, so.
English. Japanese.
I gotcha.
well, we have to go outside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, folks.
Good night, thank you again.
All right, so if we go on to the zoning amendments, we'd like to get over the wire by town meeting.
It's a little ambitious.
So it is somewhat ambitious. I think we've mentioned them before. We have the solar, the wireless, marijuana. I think the marijuana, so do you have them prioritized this way, the solar first?
No, actually, probably at this point, the marijuana should be
That's what I was,
first.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Marijuana is probably the first one. And then the OSRD is just minor, we probably could do that.
Yeah, I can get that done by the time we have our workshop.
Um,
And the use districts, that change, it's just a word in a sentence. So that's easy.
And then the special use granting authority.
Yeah, special permit granting authority. Yeah.
So do we think that's doable also, so those two?
Those two,
Yeah,
those
all right.
two are easy amendments, and I'll have that language.
And we were gonna send the temporary trailers on for wordsmithing, I believe. I think
Yes.
we
Yeah, we
we're
had
gonna
some questions
recommend
about
that.
that, yeah.
Okay. Signs is just making sure that we're in compliance with the Supreme Court
Yeah,
decisions.
the Reed decision. We haven't had any issues come up, and if we don't get to it for the spring, I think that's probably.
Okay, so that's not right. And the green communities is probably way too much to expect at this point.
Well, it depends on if the selectmen want to move forward. I know that Damon actually is very keen on moving forward with this, but I think there's some template language that we can use if they want to do it. The issue there is that I think the designations are done every October, so if we want to get the zoning in place, we probably have to do it in the spring.
Town council send over some more information on solar.
She just made the recommendations. I've got them in your packets again for Dayton and Deerfield, and Maynard was the only one, only other one, and Emily looked for that and wasn't able to find it. But,
All right.
so I think we were hoping that we might be able to get some draft language by the time we get together for
Right.
a workshop.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
So do we have, right, I mean, I have started on the wireless to some degree. I think, actually, we kind of need a decision on whether we want to keep co-locations, and some towns call them, quote, modifications to existing poles. Do we want to make that something that just could go to the building commissioner, or do we want to keep it as a whole special permit process? So some, apparently, you know, I looked up Reading, I looked up Medway's small. They've kind of just said, you know, modifications go to the building commissioner
Right, rather than going through.
than
the
going
special
through the whole
permit.
process again. Reading, on the other hand, is gonna make everybody go through some sort of, even if it's maybe a little bit abbreviated, special permit process. So since we already have a special permit process, I believe, for anything we add, do we want to keep it or do we not? It's kind of like going,
Well, wireless is an overlay district right now.
It is,
And
yes.
The ZBA is the
Special permit granting authority.
So the question is, do we want any changes to either of those?
And there are a few things, it's onerous because we have a 900-foot buffer. And we require them to go through a special permit process, even if they're just going to make a minor modification, which
well, or we could just reduce the
we
buffer.
could reduce the buffer and reduce the requirements.
When was that first written?
It's about 2001.
It's a long time ago.
It was a lot, yeah.
A lot has changed
A
in the
lot has
technology.
changed, absolutely, and I think it's overdue.
So, are you, this, what I'm looking for, is the impetus for this to just simply update the bylaw, or are there particular problems that you've run into that you're trying to address?
I think, well, there was, and honestly, I'm afraid I can't remember what the law was. It was something that came out, I think, in 2012, and it was some act that came out during the recession that had some provision in it which pertains to wireless, and we've never addressed our bylaw in relation to that. And I wish I could quote what exactly it is.
Is it a federal law or a
It
state
was a
law?
federal law. And
Really?
Lisa knew exactly what it was when I mentioned it to her.
Because I haven't seen any change to the Telecommunications
It
Act.
wasn't in that, it was like.
Oh, it was some other thing they threw at it, yeah,
Work,
okay.
it was some work act.
Okay. I'll see if I can find that. Okay, I mean, I guess we just need, well, I mean, before we even jump ahead to the details here, we probably would like to say that we want to schedule some workshops. One will be the zoning workshop. But these are the items that we're hoping to assign and have at least, you know, somewhat of a draft to at least discuss
Well,
at
I'll
a
chase
workshop.
down solar.
Okay. And to Larry's point, which is good, are we, you know, we're not looking to rewrite, we're just looking to update.
Yeah,
So, I go back to my question, how much do we want to update? I mean, we can reduce the 900-foot buffer, it seems like most of them have the vertical height. You know, no building can be closer than the vertical height of the tower, I assume, in case it falls over.
right.
Things like that, but making it, I mean, it would simplify anybody wanting to do a co-location thing if we, you know, just didn't make them go through the special permit process, but I don't know if that's in fact what we want to do. And who would decide that?
That, I mean,
Well, the selectmen.
Yeah, ultimately. I mean, we
well,
can
believe
suggest
me,
it.
this is way out of my wheelhouse, but it's something that struck a bell here, that, are there not federal regulations that require co-location?
Yes, most of them do require co-location, but the locals actually have some flexibility in what they make people do to
I see.
be able to do it. So, and that's why I said some towns, they can go through a special permit, yet again. And this recent one I saw in Medway was just saying, no, if everything's pretty much the same and you're just, they didn't even call it a co-location, they called it a modification to and they even called everything to a personal, I'm not gonna remember what the words are, but it's a legal definition in the Telecommunications Act apparently, but it's a personal wireless something or other provider. I mean, it was some facility. It was just some wacky thing I'd never heard before, but when I looked it up, it is definitely a legal term in the federal regs, so. In any case, but they just call it modification, and they you know, provided it was fairly simple, they were not gonna make a big deal out of it. Reading, on the other hand, was like, no, come again.
Right, so if you're gonna, what if you're gonna replace an antenna in kind essentially, does that, they still require a special permit for that?
Reading would, yeah. Anything,
Anything?
yeah, any, quote, I mean, again, I haven't memorized the stuff, but they were pretty strict.
I think we have to
Any
keep
modification.
Keep in mind where the technology is going too.
Right,
You know, it's going to be smaller, thinner, they're not going to be big towers. There's going to be modifications to existing structures that are in place.
Right, or even placing them on phone poles and things
Right,
like that.
right,
going-
right. So I
Yeah, so
think
it's a,
We
it's a
have
very
to give
different.
this, yeah, it's a whole different application.
Right, right. And when we first drafted this, it was, and we actually had two subsequent meetings because the person who did it, who was on the board, did a lot of research, but she was totally new to it and the technology was changing. But at that point, there was so much, I think, fear about the technology and concern about the aesthetics. And people were trying to hide them in church towers and
right.
think they look like trees and all that kind of stuff.
Well, the other thing that I think it's too much to go into now is, as George brought up, the overlay district, at some point that's going to change as the technology changes,
Right.
because they're gonna wanna be everywhere, they're
Well,
not gonna
that's-
wanna be in the overlay district.
That's the point.
I'm not sure if we tackle that now or not. That's kind of opening, that's really, I think we need a broader consensus from many more people to make that decision
Right.
than us.
I mean, I could certainly talk to Lisa about it and see what she sees
Yeah.
happening. I wonder if there would be some, and I haven't even really thought about it, but I wonder if there would be some way that if somebody were to do a tower, it would be restricted to an overlay district, but if it's a different technology, they're putting it on phone poles or something, that's not restricted to an overlay district.
It also be nice to have some insight from someone in the industry to say, this is where it's going, this is what we're doing, and really just what you should plan for.
You really do. I mean, the technology is changing so fast,
Right.
you know.
So I don't know if there's a way that we can try to reach out to find that.
You know, Lisa might have somebody.
It could help us
Yeah.
to make a determination, to George's point.
I mean, if there's so many questions, I'm wondering whether it makes sense to not try to do this for the spring.
Well, that thought occurred to me. It's like kind of the more you get into it, the more complicated it's going to get.
Well, Verizon is doing it, right?
Doing the 5G thing.
Yeah, but also doing the small cans on telephone poles. They wanted to do that on the island last year. Remember that, Bob?
Can't remember.
They were gonna put it on the phone pole down at the center.
Right.
Right,
There's a lot of objection
right.
from people on the Senate in that area. But it's coming technology. All they want is to have that stuff all over
Right,
the place.
right.
What was the objection?
Radiation. Which is less of a problem now, I think, because the transmission from the smaller cans is not very much compared to one of the towers,
Mhm.
because they're all interrelated along the link.
Have we had anything come up lately with respect to wireless for somebody wanting
It's an
to?
application.
Yeah.
Well, there was that one, I mean, the last big one I remember was at Iron Ore, when they were trying to put
Yeah,
a
well,
tower.
we killed that.
There have been a couple of inquiries, because they have to go through the historical, and, other sort of due diligence stuff. There was a proposal to put one down at Pearson Plaza, but that didn't seem to go anywhere because it's not allowed. It's not allowed there, so it would have been a variance.
The fellow who was proposing that, though, I listened to him in 2 different meetings. And because that was a dead area, there was no signal there and there's no output, he was saying federal law now would let them override our zoning
Yes.
and put a
Yes.
tower up. And I think his main problem there was there were so many different small pieces of ownership.
Mhm. Was that nothing ever happened with that one?
No, he was representing a company, and I forget who it was, but he was putting together this information in different towns just to see, it was gonna be like a 140-foot pole, probably have a single can on the top. And that would be the transmitting source. And it seemed pretty essential, a nice thing to do, because I would like to see dead areas filled, because I was in one, not anymore.
Right, and there's some notable ones down on High Road.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'd say get some insight from a consultant that could give us direction. If we can't get it for the spring, which we probably won't be able to, at least it'll be in the
Working
pipeline.
towards it, yeah.
And to get there.
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Of course,
So
the question is,
do you want me to just kind of write up questions and to see
Yeah.
what she,
Yeah.
that we go forward to Lisa, this is kind of what we're thinking, what are you seeing, what
Yeah.
makes sense?
Yeah, if you have time to do that, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay. All right. Do that. So now with the marijuana, we need to come up with different boundaries.
Right, and Lisa and I started talking about how to reframe them, like having a state highway, talked about that, but, or water bodies or something. To
Why
do-
does it need to be modified?
So the issue is, we do have an inquiry for location on Route 1. And now that we've actually looked more closely at the buffer zones that we have set up for the daycare in particular, because you've got Harmony Natural Learning Center there. But more particularly the residences, there's actually almost no locations where you could put one, and we're required to have 2 retail uses. So we can't be in a position where we're effectively zoning it out. So
I don't think you're required to have 2 retail, you mean 2 locations where they can be?
We, under our zoning, we allow 2 licenses. So it doesn't mean that they actually have to have it, but we can't
Not have,
let people not have them. Because under the state law, we can't restrict it to less than 20% of our package store licenses.
Oh, was where you come up with
Yeah,
the
that's where it
choice.
came, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like 1.6 and we rounded it up to 2.
Okay, and the problem being that currently the setbacks are so restrictive that there's really no practical place to put them.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, they're more restrictive than we thought they were. And the residential is really what's the kicker there.
And what's the setback?
It's 300 feet for residents and it's property line to property line. And the way the district is set up, it follows the property lines, and so almost all of the district backs onto residents. So there's no way to get the 300 feet from property line to property line, except in a couple of locations which currently are problematic.
Anywhere in town, or is there an overlay district or something?
We restrict the retail to the business and light industrial, which is along Route 1 from the municipal boundary down to Boston Road. On the easterly side, it cuts out a little bit higher on the westerly side.
On the westerly side, there are residents.
Yes.
I guess there are a
Yeah,
couple.
and there are actually residences in
Yeah,
the
there's more than you think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot more. Yeah, I should have brought the bubble diagram up, but, and there are also residences within the district itself, which complicates it even more. Because there's some areas that we thought would be feasible, but there are actually residences right next to them, so.
Was the 300-foot the recommendation, or what was came out of the state.
I have to go back and look at the CCC.
Yeah.
I think it was 500 for educational uses, and I think it may have been 300. I believe, though, the wording allows us to make it less restrictive if we wanted to do that, but,
I believe so. Not so much for schools, but I think for residences.
for residences. But we've maintained essentially the same setbacks that we had for the medical marijuana. So we have to look at changing both, because a lot of people are trying to combine a medical dispensary as well as a retail facility.
Yeah, it also sounds like towns are making them both the same, they're not differentiating at all, so it does make sense to have both uses.
That's the intention of the CCC long-term, is just to roll it into one.
I think so,
Right.
I think so. Because the process for doing medical marijuana is so onerous at this point. Why would you do that if you could do adult use?
Right. Okay, so this one is going to be kind of more of a priority since we have an applicant.
Oh, I think it is.
So we've got to just kind of figure out what to do about it and how we can change it. I mean, from the 300 feet property line to property line, would it help us out if we did building to building?
The problem with doing that, and the reason we didn't do that is that
The size of the parcels, I think, are fine.
yeah, the size of the parcels and also, the potential for
The size of the parcels being small.
A big parcel building,
Yeah.
and then, it's about 300 feet to get to the
Property line.
property line.
Yeah.
And so it's probably not touching.
Well, I understand why you did that, but by doing that, we basically excluded anybody almost from doing anything, so that's why.
Was that statutory?
I think there was some language in the CCC regs. that
I don't think it was
saying-
property line.
I'll check on
We'll
that.
have to look.
Yeah, because I thought there ended up being some language in there about property line.
Well, if we keep that, then we're
Yeah, then it's going to be,
we're
unless,
chasing our tails here.
right, unless you do, like a lot of the residences that back up on the west side, there's some significant wetlands that go in between, so effectively, they're not, even though the properties are touching, they're not really adjacent uses in that sense. And there's a water body that runs through there as well.
All right. Well, we need a volunteer.
So I was gonna, Lisa and I started talking about that, so I'm happy to try to craft something that, and run it by her, but if somebody else wants to help out, that would be great.
I think we need someone else to get their feet into this if we get somebody to take it on.
Volunteer.
Thank you.
Not quite sure what I'm supposed to do at this point, but.
We'll talk.
We'll talk.
Yeah. Just coordinate, 'cause she, she'll take it all on and then,
It won't happen.
we'll get sidelined with something, so. You can keep her on the straight and narrow.
I think the reverse would probably be more.
I know.
I just of interest, I feel as though I've heard there are other inquiries on either neighbor along Route 1, or someone in Raleigh on Route 1, or something in Newburyport, right? Traffic circle that's swirling around, so I'm sort of curious
I know, it's gonna be
how
marijuana.
towns relate to each other in terms of, if
maybe-
they get established, is there any?
Right, and that was actually one of the questions, was one of the areas that we were looking at, and this would still work for us, because right up in the traffic circle, but it backs up on the daycare that's in Newburyport. The properties are actually adjacent because of the shape of the property. And so even though they're not in our town, how does that impact us?
Right.
And I know
If
some-
it's within a certain number of feet to the town boundary, is that somehow, can we take credit for that in some
Yeah.
way as another
Yeah,
town?
I don't think,
No,
yeah,
we
no,
can't.
we can't, we still have to.
It's hard to imagine businesses finding that an attractive market if there's a quarter mile away, there's an already established.
In another.
If they get in ahead of us,
Right.
it's just, reflections.
One of the traffic circle, or proposal of the traffic circle in Newburyport, and even on Story S, there's objection to it, to town council level right now, and I'm reading the newspaper.
Right, well, they're actually
There's
going to
a
take a
lot of
ballot.
activity.
Yeah, they're going to take a ballot vote
Right.
on it, which is costs.
So if that kicks it out, certainly they want to look at Newbury.
Right. And we've had inquiries, I had one this week actually for somebody who seemed to feel that they were going to be small enough that they didn't need to adhere to the areas that we had designated for the retail sales, but they've actually since pulled out anyway. But I think we're going to make that was probably about 3 now. One serious one. So.
Yeah, just give me the towns again, I know I got Dayton and Maiden
Dayton
and some
and
Deerfield.
Deerfield,
And Deerfield.
right, and you've got copies of Dayton and Deerfield in your
They're in the
packets.
packet.
And the,
Yeah,
good, you want me to work with that on you? Sure, if you'd like to. Sure. Want to set dates for the
Yes.
groups,
Well,
workshops?
probably also come back to the schedule, just to go through that quickly, but let's look at the dates first.
Well, it looked like the schedule was gonna have us,
Do you want to go through the schedule first?
I don't wanna go through it, but the first, all we need is the first date, which would be something to send on to the Board of Selectmen, which was the beginning of,
It was the beginning of February, working backwards.
Right.
I had it set at our February 6th meeting, and the language doesn't need to be finalized by then. We just need to be able to send them a listing and a brief description of the amendments that are being proposed. But they would certainly have to be well set by the time the public hearing is advertised so that people can actually look at the language that's being proposed. So that would be by February 19th. That's when the first notice would be published. And again, I'm not 100% sure about the town meeting date, but just based on what we've been doing,
Right.
it's been the 4th Tuesday.
so we'd have to have final language by the 19th.
Yes. So
All
that's
right,
2
so
months,
that's-
2
yeah.
months from today.
It comes quickly.
It comes
Goes
very,
by very quickly.
it comes very quickly, very quickly.
All right,
So
so,
again, it can be amended after the public hearing, and that's what the public hearing process is for. But
right, but we need something to submit
Yeah,
that's
we need
gotta be
something to
pretty close to what we
Right.
want, what we want anyway, whether it gets amended is something else.
And in the past, I've sort of pushed it out a little closer to the signing of the warrant, but I know that Tracy's been trying to get things
Sooner and
sooner rather than later, so.
Okay.
And there have been instances where these, not, before my time, there was an instance where these deadlines were not met, the public hearing was held not within the proper time frame, and the Attorney General kicked it back, so. I don't know, Larry, if you ever ran across that and was where you're
Knock on wood, no. Them for the grace of God.
And that's not fun, when you've
No,
gone through all
no.
of that and had to get booted out on the technicality.
Okay, well, I think first workshop that we, I think should have first would be our process workshop, which we were hoping to maybe do during the week, and it seemed that folks might be able to do a Friday morning. Does that still work for?
It works for me.
That's fine for me.
Okay, so the first, I'm looking at January, so the first one would be the 4th. Does that work?
All right, having said that,
Right, I know, exactly.
what time in the morning?
That's like 9:30-ish, would that work? So for
The only reason I ask is we're driving down to New York Friday afternoon, so
Oh, okay.
that should work.
How much time do you anticipate?
I'm just thinking like an hour, but.
Yeah, hour and a half max probably.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Depends how
I
many
can do
questions you-
earlier, I can't really do later. If it's an hour and a half, that's 9:30 is fine.
So, I don't know, can anybody do earlier than that? Can
No.
anybody, no, okay.
I'll retire.
Well, that's no excuse.
Okay, so that's the process one. And so we just try for the following week,
The 12th?
the 11th? Is that gonna work? Same time, same.
And that's the,
The 11th,
at 9:30,
9:30.
and that's for the bylaws?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will try to get something to you, obviously, before that, Lisa, to whether we're gonna do it or not, you know, to.
Oh.
Old? I just, yes, I'm not doing that. 10:30 conflict, unfortunately. That's
On the 11th?
Yeah, to be working.
Can you do an afternoon on the 11th?
Yeah.
Can anybody else do an afternoon on the 11th?
Yes.
Can I do an afternoon? Yes. Okay.
What time?
What works for you?
I should be free after 1 o'clock, I think.
Kristen, does that work for you, or do you have
Um,
a hard?
I have till 2:15. Can't go past 2:15,
Okay.
but that's almost an hour and a half. We start at 1.
So would a late afternoon work?
Well, it's not gonna work for Kristen.
No, not on Friday, but after 4.
Oh, you know,
On a different day.
On a different day, yeah.
it just occurs to me, I assume we'll be meeting here,
Yes.
and this will be a posted meeting.
It has, yeah, it will be a posted meeting. It'll be posted as a workshop, but it will be posted.
Is it a problem that the town offices are closed on Friday?
No, because the building's open.
Okay.
You know, the building committee's been meeting at 7 a.m. on Fridays. So it's not an issue.
Okay.
And we make sure that the room is open and people can come in if they need to.
Okay, so what is our time?
Well, I think we're still searching for a day for that second meeting. Or else we can do the 11th at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, sure. Is that okay, Kristen?
Yep.
Tight meeting.
Count to leave at 2:15.
Okay. Anything else we need to?
The budget.
Oh, the budget.
Oh, the budget.
Oh, the budget.
So I put copies of the budget materials in your packets. And we have spreadsheets from Tracy, so there's a format that we've done. It includes both wages and salaries, both for myself and for Emily, and also the stipends for all of you. And on that note, Diana's going to send you instructions about what you guys need to do in terms of filling out paperwork. for that, so as soon as I get that, I'll send it to you.
I don't seem to have the spreadsheets, but I have them on here. I've already seen them anyway. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm beginning to feel like John.
Yeah, should be in that packet, looks like that. Maybe further down. There it is.
So I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at this. There's a cover letter which basically explains the increases that are being requested. Tracy asked us to keep salary increases to 2% and anything over 2.5% for expenses or overall budget, she'd like an explanation for. One of the things that she reminded us about is that she's looking for some goals and objectives for projects for the coming fiscal year, so I listed those on the first page. I don't know if anybody has any additional thoughts. I'm going to be really optimistic and say that the master plan will be done before the beginning of this fiscal year, coming fiscal year, so that's why I have to put it on here. I don't know if you want to go through it line by line or just whatever.
What is the MVPC assessment by you, by the town?
A tremendous amount of work from them. I think we'd be really lost without them, but the assessment is based on our population. Ours is pretty small, and so and there's certain things that we do pay for, the services that they provide, like MyMap and pictometry, and the update of the parcel maps every year. Those are all, we contract with them for those things, and that's the budget that's represented there. But they provide a lot of support to us outside of that.
Is that the Stormwater Collaborative as well?
The Stormwater Collaborative, actually, that was free for a while. They now do, I think there is some fee to participate in that, but it's pretty nominal. We also contract with them we have this mobile app that we use for stormwater, all the data, mapping, identifying catch basins and outfalls, and the IDDE program. That's $2,000, and that's not our budget. That's actually John Connell's budget for the Stormwater Committee. So we do have other contracts with them besides the ones that the planning board is responsible for. But they...
So sort of assistance when you call.
Yeah, and we...
That sort of general.
It's kind of that general, and we're also... There's a certain number of local technical assistance hours that we get as part of this. So they'll provide certain services or do projects for us that are paid for through local. We don't pay for it, but it's done through the LTA hours. So it's free to us.
Are they a resource to the board when you actually have a project? Or is it, like if we had a question about an OSRD, something, like do you call up Joe or Karen and like talk to them about it? Are they that kind of resource for the
I
town
think
or not really?
We haven't used them that way, but
Yeah.
I think they would be open to any questions that we had if we felt that we needed their input.
Yeah, for some of these bylaw questions, like,
Right, right.
what are our neighbors doing about their buffer zones on marijuana? You know, or
Right, and,
just to shorten the amount of research we individually are doing.
right. And for some of our planner meetings, they'll have discussions about some of these things, you know, areas that are of concern for all of us,
Mhm.
and then provide resources afterwards if we need them.
Yeah. It seems as though a lot of our neighboring towns would be having these same conversations about bylaw amendments or, you know, other things. So to have a central resource that can
Right.
cull through some of the, you know, short circuit the work we're doing would be helpful. Thanks.
But they also head up things like the multi-hazard mitigation plan, which needs to be updated every 5 years. They did the housing production plan. That was funded through a grant, but,
Right.
I have no questions.
no questions?
What do you need from us to just to approve the budget?
Approve the budget.
I guess basically, I mean, if you want to make a motion to approve it, that would be fine, or at least I can tell Tracy that it's been reviewed by the board.
I think that's easier.
Okay with it.
Sure, whatever you need.
Okay, I think that's probably sufficient. Thank you.
See, now I lost my agenda. This pile of paper.
Planners report, I don't really have too much to report, and this will be kind of combined with the liaison report from last Board of Selectmen's meeting. They have appointed a new building committee, a 3-person committee, which is Bob Connors, Eric Spahn, and John Keller, who was on our OPM designer selection committee. And he was the contractor's project manager for the Salisbury Police Station. They did have their first meeting last Friday, and are moving forward with the directive from the selectmen to focus first on designing and building the police station at the 7 and 7R Morgan Ave site, and to bring it in on time and under budget, working with the $6.5 million total project cost. If there's any funding left over, that will go towards town hall, but I guess we'll have to see how that all shakes
That'll
out.
be no easy task economically.
So, that's pretty much it. Bob sent a request to Rachel for permitting information regarding site plan review and some other stuff, so we're working on getting that to him.
Any candidates to fill the vacant position on this board?
The one, actually, that's a good question, I wanted to bring that up as well. The one person I talked to who looked like it would be hopeful decided that he doesn't want to take it on at this point. So if any of you have any suggestions, let me know, otherwise maybe it's time to put the word out.
Yeah, I have not heard back from Mary Stone, and I'll push that a little bit.
Okay. So maybe by our next meeting, we should make a decision whether we want to actually put an ad in the paper or get the word out. So that's really all I have.
Conservation committee?
I got to attend that. So, most of the items in this previous items, or 3 of the continued, are not moved on. The Evergreen they did their presentation for,
Oh, they did?
which for Concom was relatively simple because you're really talking about a regrading job and doing the drainage. So while there were a few things about the design discussed that really wasn't relative to the Conservation Commission's charge. So overall, from their point of view, the regrading and having the water flow into the pond, they're gonna fill. I mean, the whole thing, as we know, it's a big bowl there, so they're gonna fill, they're gonna grade it at like 2.5% to go toward the pond. On the High Road side, they're gonna keep the water from going into the pond from the road and have it flow down to there's actually a catch basin there that goes out to Parker Street. Who knew? You know, so, yeah. So hopefully that'll help keep the pond clean. They're proposing to put an aerator into the pond to help keep it clear. And Concom closed their meeting with a couple of conditions. They wanted to see the phasing. They had proposed to phase the project and not, you know, just tear it all up and do it all at once. So they'd start at one end and sort of gradually move south. They wanted to see the SWIP reports, and they wanted to see the erosion control to make sure that any erosion stays on the site. And that was kind of it for their comments. And that was the highlight of the evening.
Well, there was some discussion about the emergency access on Plum Island too, wasn't there?
There was Steve Mangan spoke, but it was kind of, he just spoke against it, shall we say.
Did they take any action at all on it, or is it, did they keep the discussion open?
I think they closed that one too.
Steve spoke against it. Wonder why.
No, I understand he's got some concerns about traffic and
Oh, okay.
some other things.
Yeah.
He was concerned that it would be used for things other than emergency access.
Well, there are ways to control that.
That's what they said. You know, it's going to be gated, so it's,
Yeah, I mean, that's the beginning.
so that was, and then there was not much discussion other than Mr. Mangan's. Wasn't thrilled with the idea.
The ZBA has a meeting tomorrow night.
Is that, I thought that they were having trouble getting everybody there.
I haven't heard anything else.
Okay,
I'll call Susan tomorrow.
okay, might be good. I thought one of the members couldn't make it.
Well, I hadn't heard from Susan, don't come, so I'll call her.
And we did meet, where the commissioners' meeting is actually tomorrow night, so no report since the last time.
Do we have anything else for the good of the order?
I don't think so.
No, nothing?
Move to adjourn.
Then move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?